He hasn't called in over a year. No texts, no birthday wishes, just silence. Then tonight, my phone rings. It's him. Hey, he says casually, like nothing ever happened. You coming for dinner? I'm 2,000 miles away. I moved 2,000 miles away and didn't tell my father goodbye. No long hug, no explanation, no dramatic airport moment where he'd stand there stoic and quiet while I tried not to cry. Just a rented U-Haul, half packed by midnight, engine humming by dawn. I didn't even leave a note, just left. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some final screw you. It was survival, space, oxygen. The kind you don't realize you've been deprived of until you're gasping for it. Growing up, we were never a family that said things out loud. We didn't talk about bad days or good ones. No, I love you. No, I'm sorry. Our home was a tight, practical machine. School drop-offs, dinner at 6, Saturday chores. But feelings? They were dangerous, messy things best left buried. We weren't cold, just emotionally mute. We did what needed doing. If I cried, it was in the bathroom, door locked, water running. If I aced a test, it was met with a nod. If I failed at something, there'd be a tense silence over dinner, a slight clench of the jaw, maybe a dry comment. You should have known better. No follow-up, no unpacking. Just on to the next thing. Even when mom died, the grief was handled like a maintenance issue. Her things were boxed up in a weekend. No discussion, no stories shared. Just a quiet understanding that life moves on. I was 13, so when I got the job offer, I didn't celebrate. I didn't ask what Dad thought. I packed up my studio apartment 2 towns over, signed the lease on a place across the country, and left. New job, new city, new life, a clean break. That was the phrase I kept clinging to. I didn't owe anyone anything. And besides, it wasn't like they'd notice. And for a while, I was right. No calls, no texts, not even a "did you land okay?" Nobody asked where I went, not even out of curiosity. It was as if I had slipped through a crack in the floor, and they were too busy sweeping to notice. A strange kind of peace settled over my life. I bought furniture I actually liked, took long walks at night, learned how to cook something besides eggs and toast. I started to feel like a person I hadn't had room to be before. Then, months later, my phone lit up. Dad. I stared at the screen, numb. My first thought was immediate dread. Something's wrong. Someone's dead. Heart attack, cancer, my uncle, my grandmother. Had he finally found out I left for good? The rational part of me kicked in and answered flat voice, like muscle memory. Hello. There was a pause, then casually like nothing had ever happened, like I hadn't vanished off the map. Hey, you coming for dinner? Just like that. No, where are you? No, why did you leave? No, are you okay? Just that one sentence dropped like a marble into a still pond. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, suddenly 12 years old again, and unsure what the right answer was. The silence on my end stretched out until it got awkward. I want dinner. He said again, your aunt's making that curry? You like 7 o'clock. I looked around my apartment, the late afternoon light pooling on the floor, the IKEA lamp I'd assembled by myself, the sound of cars outside my third-floor window in a city he didn't know I lived in. He didn't ask where I was calling from, didn't acknowledge the months of silence. It was like I'd gone out to run an errand and just taken my time coming back. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream. You never said goodbye either. You never asked where I went. You never noticed I was drowning in that house. But I didn't, because the truth is, I think he did notice. I think he saw all of it. The quiet panic in my teenage years, the emotional distance the way I flinched when he walked into a room, the way I pulled away when he tried awkwardly to be near. And I think this was his way of trying. Not an apology, not a confession, just a breadcrumb, a thin invitation across the void. Dinner! I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I told him I was busy and hung up. Then I sat there, phone in my lap, stomach twisting. Because now the silence is broken. Now I can't pretend it's over. Now there's a thread again. Fragile, frayed, but real. And I don't know if I want to follow it back. But I haven't deleted his number, and I haven't blocked the next call. And part of me, God help me, wants to go home. Just once. Just to see if anything's changed. Or if I have. Leaving wasn't impulsive. It was slow and planned and deliberate. I've been rehearsing it for years in my head. Not a dramatic escape, just extraction. Quiet, methodical, like tiptoeing out of a house where everyone's asleep and you don't want to wake anyone. I didn't want a scene. I wanted absence, a clean, bloodless cut. I saved every spare dollar, picked a city where I knew no one, secured a job, signed a lease, boxed up my life piece by piece. I made a list, closed the utility account, cancel the gym membership, clear out the closet. Practical steps. All muscle, no heart. The emotional part that happened behind locked doors. Late nights packing in silence. The weight of sorting through a childhood's worth of objects that all said, "You were here, but you didn't matter much." And still, I folded it all into boxes. I told no one. Not friends, not family, not even my brother. I didn't want the questions. I didn't want the guilt trip. I wasn't running away from home. I was walking away from a void. Because if I'm honest, there's always been this shapeless ache under everything, this quiet hunger for someone to see me. Not just notice my existence, but recognize it. And the longer I lived under that roof, the more it felt like I was going invisible. So I left. Without the final conversation, without closure, without the scene in the driveway where a dad finally cracks, says he's sorry, says he tried. That scene only happens in movies. In my world, people don't apologize. They just call you a year later, like nothing ever happened, and ask if you're coming for dinner. I should have expected it, the casual script, the total absence of context. That's how we've always done it. Ignore the wreckage, reset the table, pretend no one bled. But sitting there on the edge of my bed, phone still warm in my hand, I felt something deeper than anger, grief. Grief for the version of me that once waited for more, the kid who thought maybe one day he'd come to the science fair, maybe he'd say he was proud. The teenager who wanted someone to say, "Tell me how you're feeling," and actually mean it. The young adult who held on to the idea that maybe with enough distance, he'd miss me enough to change. That version of me didn't make it. She got quietly buried somewhere between ignored birthdays and dinners eaten in silence. And what's left now is someone who doesn't even know how to answer a call like that. Am I coming for dinner? I don't know. I don't even know where you think I live. I don't know what you think we are to each other now. I don't know if you've finally noticed I'm gone, or if this is just the night you happen to remember I exist. But I do know what will happen if I go. I'll walk in. He'll say, "Hey, there you are." Someone will pass the rice. Nobody will say a word about the year that vanished. And I'll sit at the table again, body present, spirit folded in, like always. You don't just wake up one day and walk away from your family. You don't slam a door and never look back, at least not without 1,000 silent rehearsals in your head. It happens slowly. You shrink, you quiet yourself, you get smaller and smaller until you start to vanish first in your own mind, then in theirs. Until one day you realize no one's noticed, no one's asked where you went inside yourself. And that's when you understand you could leave, really leave, and it wouldn't even register. So I left not in a fury, not with drama, just gone. I borrowed a friend's truck, took a week to pack, waited until they were both at work. Then I locked the door behind me like I was just stepping out for groceries. No note, no text, no forwarding address. Because what do you write to people who never really knew you? What's the point of a goodbye when you were never fully there to begin with? I told myself it was merciful, this clean break. No fights, no guilt tripping, no hollow promises, just silence. A fitting end to a lifetime of it. So when the call came almost a year later, I didn't know what to do with it. "You coming for dinner?" That was it. Not "where are you?" or "why haven't we heard from you?" Just a casual, offhand question like we'd spoken last week, like I still lived 20 minutes away, like I hadn't ghosted my entire existence. At first, I thought maybe he didn't remember. Maybe he'd genuinely forgotten I'd moved across the country. That would be pathetic, but at least it would make sense. But part of me wondered, was this it? Was this his way of reaching out? Was this somehow his version of I miss you? The thought almost hurt more than the alternative, because if that was his attempt, if that was the best he could muster, it meant there really was no shared language between us, no common ground, just years of missed signals and emotional static. What do you do with that? I stared at the phone, holding all the words I've wanted to say for years. You never saw me. You never asked how I was. You never noticed when I was hurting. And now you're pretending none of it happened. But I didn't want to unload it. Not to him. Not now. He wouldn't understand. Or worse, he'd understand just enough to shut down again. To say nothing. Like always. So I went small. Detached. Just enough truth to answer the question without opening a door. I moved, remember? A pause. Oh, right, he said. That was it. No follow-up. No, where to? No, how've you been? Just silence. Then click. He hung up. I stared at the screen like it might light up again. Like maybe he'd realize. Like maybe the silence would feel heavy to him, too, for once. But nothing. And that's when it hit me, not just the sadness, but the sting beneath it. It's like I was never gone. Like my absence was so natural, so expected, that it barely registered. Or maybe worse, maybe I was never really there in his mind to begin with. Just a shadow that passed through the house. Useful until I wasn't. A kid who watered the plants, did their homework, stayed out of trouble. Easy to ignore. And when I left, it didn't create a hole. It just made more space. And that realization, that quiet, brutal truth, it lands heavier than any fight would have. Because you can yell at someone who hurt you, but what do you say to someone who never truly saw you enough to miss you when you're gone?